Hello and welcome to another Pauper video. I'm Kelly Kais and today we're going to be discussing the metagame on Magic Online. Now this isn't the exact metagame, this is the winner's metagame because every 5-0 trophy gets posted and all of them are listed out for us to look over and discuss and try to nerd out on. So before we get into this, remember that this video is brought to us by Card Market. I really appreciate Card Market for the sponsorship, and you can get all of the cards from all these lists on Card Market. If you're wanting to get your cards for Paupergeddon, maybe check it out there. So let's go ahead and get into the metagame. Before I do that, make sure to give me a like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about this metagame. Let me know what you thought about all the winners and whether or not this is good, bad, ambivalent. All good. So the top of the metagame here continues to be Glitter's Affinity. So last week we had, we'll just pop over there for a second, 27% Glitter's Affinity with 10% Golgari Gardens. Now we've got 15%, almost 16% Glitter's Affinity with 10% Golgari Gardens. So essentially the Glitter's decks are not spewing and making as many trophies as last week, but they're still the top deck, and it doesn't seem that any other deck has really gotten to the same rate. The next decks, like we had Isoterra, then Jeskai Ephemerate at 8% and 7%, and now we have Jeskai Ephemerate at 9% and Isoterra at 6%. So really the meta share of the 3 on down decks hasn't really changed that much, but the top of the meta is still Glitter's Affinity. Is just, I think people are experimenting with a couple of other strategies, maybe trying to fight Glitter Affinity, or maybe they're just not being quite as successful. So the main takeaway here is Glitter's Affinity, 19 trophies, 15%. Next highest, it was Golgari Gardens at 10.6%. And Jeskai Ephemerate making a bunch of trophies. Isoterra after that. So all tied in a row are Isoterra, Mono Red, Blue X Fae, and Boros Synth. And we actually saw a couple of Izzet Fairies this week, so we'll get into that. And then we have some blue-white familiars, and then it kind of like trails off from there. So let's just go ahead and get into the day by day. We had 122 total trophies, if that matters to you. So on the first day, the 10th, we had nothing really standing out. 2 ofs for Gardens, Jeskai Ephemerate, Boros Synth, and Orzhov Blade, with 1 ofs for Glitters, Mono Red, Turbo Fog, Golgari Dredge, and Mono Blue Fae. And I guess really the big takeaway is in the recent weeks, Mono Red has really dropped off. It was the biggest, most played deck. Now it's like only 6.5%. And the cool deck that I saw here in the first day was this Boros Synthesizer playing all the Glitters. That's kind of a spicy deck. It's basically just your regular Boros Synthesizer with a more artifact-based land base, and they're playing for all the Glitters. On day 2, we did have some standouts. So we have 4 Mono Red, 4 Fairies, and those were the top decks for the day. Then 2 Boros Synth, where one of them was actually a Boros Synth playing all the Glitters. So let's just show you that since this is here, but this is basically like Boros Bushwhacker or Boros Kuldotha Burn, sort of. They have all 1-drops and then Kuldotha Rebirth, Bushwhacker, and they're also playing all the Glitters. So this is kind of a sick deck, and Zamu has made a couple of trophies with this, but no one else has seemed to be actually picking this up. So I don't know if it's like awesome or kind of sketchy, but it does seem to go pretty hard. The 4 of Mono Red, we had 1 of them, which was actually old school burn. So this burn was by Lanmi, who's playing 4 Thermal Alchemist, 4 Epicure, 4 Sawblade Scamp for like a pinger type burn, and no card draw effects whatsoever. And then we had 4 Blue X Fae, and we'll get into that in a second here. But some of the spice was Siri 80 on Blue-White Affinity playing 4 Reverse Engineer, which was one of the things that people played originally when Glitters came out, but people kind of dropped. I guess that allows them to get value off their Aether Spellbomb and Relic of Progenitus that they have in the main deck, which is kind of funky. They can also tap all of their clues off the Novice Inspector and Thraven Inspector to draw 3 cards. So maybe that's actually something that should be re-looked at. Like maybe we just use all of our clues to cast big draw threes, ancestral recall type stuff. That's pretty cool. So here's the first Is It Fairies posting. We had one by Drugo and one by TRM, which was Armatana, who has his own, it goes by Stompy MTG on YouTube. It's pretty much your classic Is It Fairies, but since Is It hasn't been doing very well lately, I just definitely wanted to point it out. Then we have a Grixis Affinity list, which I thought was kind of spicy in that this person's playing 0 Galvanic Blast and just 4 cast down here for removal spells, a bunch of different creatures. And I got really lucky and managed a trophy with Poison Storm, so I was pretty stoked about that. I made a video yesterday about Poison Storm, which you can check out. And this deck is really sweet. It aims to poison your opponent and then win the game by proliferating onto them. Really, really fun deck. You should definitely check that out. And we have a mono white glitters, which I am not kind of hard to say like if this is mono white glitters or if it's just mono white heroic. It pretty much is mono white heroic, but the only heroic creature they have is the Trailblazer. So it's all sorts of confusing. 4 Ornithopter, 4 Trailblazer, 2 of the Slumbering Keep Guard, which is a relatively new card. And then they're playing Mana Tithe, all that glitters, basically everything else. So I would classify this as heroic, but it's kind of a really different version. So that's kind of a neat one to see. And back to the Boros. So let's move on to the next day. On the 12th, the biggest winner was Glitters Affinity with 4 pilots. And then 2 ofs for Jeskai Ephemerate, Is It Terror, White Weenie, Caw Gates, and Boros Gates. Although Boros Gates was the same pilot, and we'll get into that. Then we have 1 ofs for Gardens, Mono Red, Boros Synth, Turbo Fog again, Orzhov Blade, and Grixis Affinity one more time. So the Boros Synthesizer that I saw is once again playing all that glitters. Kind of neat. But other than that, not too much spice. The Boros Gates was by Sculpture. If you haven't seen this deck, it's basically White Weenie playing the Boros. So it's not White Weenie, it's Boros Bully, but with Gates. So this is like the token go wide strategy with Battle Screech and Prismatic Strands, Faithless Looting to get a bunch of value, and then you win the game with the Rally the Peasants. But they're not playing Rally the Peasants, they're instead playing Basilisk Gate. On the 13th, no spice. I'm very sorry. Nothing crazy really stood out to me. We had 4 Glitters Affinity once again, 3 Blue X Fae, with one of them being Is It Fairies, 3 Familiars, which was apparently a really big day for Familiars, but all these pilots were choosing to play different cards. And then we have 2 Jeskai Ephemerate, and 1 of for Golgari Gardens, Is It Terror, Boros Synth, Rakdos Burn, Elves popping up again, Grixis Affinity, Bogles, and Dimir Control, which is different than Dimir Terror, because Dimir Control is playing a control game and just eventually putting a Tolarian Terror or a Murmuring Mystic down, and usually winning the game by riding off their Thorn of the Black Rose. On the next day, the 14th, we actually had a very high day for Glitters Affinity with 5 total pilots. But this was also a day with a lot of lists getting posted, 22 decks. We had 3 Golgari Gardens, 3 Dimir Terror, and then 2 ofs for Rakdos Madness, Mono Red, Blue Red Terror, 1 ofs for Jeskai Ephemerate, Boros Synth, Familiars, Turbo Fog, and Caw Gate. So this burn deck that I wanted to point out is a closer to your Swiftspear metagame burn, because it's got the 4 Reckless Impulse, and it's using 3 Dwarven Forge Chanters to get value off their draw spells by pumping their creature. But they're basically on Bushwhacker, Tomb Raider, Epicure with Kuldotha Rebirth, Forge Chanter to close, and then a ton of burn spells with 4 Bolt, 4 Gal Blast, 3 Chain Lightning. And then they also have 4 Implement of Combustion and 1 Chromatic Star. Not really sure. I feel like this Chromatic Star used to be the 4th Chanter, and they decided maybe they wanted to go a little bit lower to the ground, so that's why they did it that way. Other than that, not too spicy. On the 15th, we had 4 ofs for Jeskai Ephemerate, which was a surprise, 3 Golgari Gardens, and then 2 ofs for Glitters Affinity, Is It Terror, 1 Madness Burn again, 1 Elves, 1 Grixis Control from Carves, and a Walls deck that we have not really been seeing basically any of, but This is your spice for the day, which is the Cascade Walls. If you're not familiar with this, this is looking to ramp out Avenging Hunter, Annoyed Allosaur, and just like slam in with that. They've got Rebel Fort, and they don't actually have any way to tap and untap there and go infinite here. Not that I can see. So it's really just slam big stuff attack. They also have they have 4 Avenging Hunter and 1 Monarch. Annoyed Allosaur. Not playing any Prosperous Pirates is interesting. I guess they're just going to get by on using Generous End to slam in. Very, very cool. Maybe a Walls pilot can chime in and tell me if that's a good list or a funky list. Then on the last day, we've got nothing really standing out too big, with 2 Glitter's Affinity, 2 Golgari Gardens, and then a bunch of 1-ofs, including Jeskai Ephemerate, Is It Terror, Demir Fae, I believe. Yep, it was a Demir Fae. Boros Synth, a Familiars, and Elves, a Dredge. And then your one standout here is Tribe. Tribe combo by Forest Turf. And they're playing Tireless Tribe with Escape Tunnel. So you can play the Escape Tunnel, make the Tireless Tribe unblockable, and then attack, and then inside out it. 1 Wedding Invitation. 4 inside out, obviously. Let's see. Do they have other ways to make it? They do have 1 Shadow Rift. So they're using Philology Archaeologist to just get a bunch of value off most of their stuff. Kind of funky. We haven't really seen anybody actually succeed with Escape Tunnel, but this was one of the classic combos that people were thinking of. Escape Tunnel plus Tireless Tribe. And we have Walker 735's Jeskai Ephemerate list. That's quite different than most people's, but he's playing no Frogmite and looks to be no Thraben Inspector, playing 4 Ardent Recruit and 4 of this card's Silver Raven, which nobody's probably even seen before. It's a 1/1 artifact flying creature. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1, and it's for 1 blue pip. So he's just basically playing all 1-drops, and then the draw package here is 4 Reckless Impulse, 4 Thoughtcast. We have a Golgari Gardens with a different take on the mana base, where they're playing 4 Troll of Khazad-dûm and splashing red with Geothermal Bog, so that they can play Red Blast in the sideboard, as well as Ancient Grudge and Shenanigans to try to take out the artifact lists, as well as fight against blue decks, I guess. And this pilot also top-8'd the Pauper Challenge over the weekend, I believe. So that's all the lists for the week. We're going to go ahead and just check out this pie chart to close it out. The main deck in the metagame was Glitter's Affinity. Okay, there we go. You can get all the glitters, the sweet art for not too much. And then the second deck of the metagame was Avenging Hunter stuff with Golgari Gardens. Then rounding that out in third, Jeskai Ephemerate. So 2 decks are taking up 25% of the metagame. That seems like relatively standard. It's definitely a lot less skewed than the previous week and the week before that, so I'm happy to see that. Nice to see some shifts in the metagame and a little bit of spice. Once again, if you enjoyed this kind of content, let me know. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in all the sideboard guides that I have out, check out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/CaliGuys. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.